In every forest, there are stories hidden between trees, buried under branches, covered by years, forgotten by everyone. A shadow of an ancient war still remains, a machine abandoned by an army that never returned, slowly claimed by nature. This is the AT-ST that time left behind.
Hey everyone, I'm Toby and welcome to my very first video on this channel, and I'm really happy to have you here. I've always loved crafting, sculpting and creating things out of whatever I could find. But just so you know, I'm not a professional. I'm still learning, experimenting and figuring things out as I go. So today we're building a diorama of an AT-ST claimed by nature, and I'll show you exactly how I bring this scene to life step by step. So thanks for being here, and may the creative force be with you.
I'm starting with the AT-ST plastic model kit from Bandai. The assembly is pretty easy and doesn't take much time. The parts fit well, the build is simple, so it comes together quickly, which makes it a great base to work on. Funny thing is, this whole diorama idea actually started with a wallpaper. The artist took a real forest artwork, originally a painting by Heinrich Böhmer, and digitally added an AT-ST walker into it. I actually met the artist at a Comic-Con, we talked about Star Wars for a bit and he told me the story behind the image. If you want to check out the artist's work, I've put a link in the video description below. It's definitely worth a look. After the assembly, I sprayed the model with a grey primer from Army Painter. It gives the surface a clean, even base coat and helps the next layers of paint, washes and weathering stick better. But before aging it with paint, I'm adding damage manually. I'm using my craft knife and my multi-tool to create scratches, chipped edges and small structural scars, forcing the model to look like it's lived longer than it was ever meant to. Yes, I try to weather it and it tries to escape. Next comes the black wash, adding instant depth, shadows and contrast to the surface. I used the watered down black acrylic paint and wiped the excess paint off with a paper towel. And after that I dry brushed the whole model with a white paint. To create rust, I use pastel pigment powders. I gently brushed them onto the metal areas, especially around edges, bolts and the parts where rust would naturally start to form. The pigments give a soft, dusty texture and create realistic rusty tones without looking like regular paint. To show the dirt that built up over the years, I paint a few thin black streaks onto the surface. Next I start adding moss onto the AT-ST. For this I mix wood glue with a little water, just enough to make it easy to brush on. Railroad scenery scatter works great for this. It has the right texture and small particles to mimic real moss and dirt. It's a very simple trick and anyone can do it. The scatter settles naturally into the details and instantly makes the walker look older and reclaimed. Layer by layer, the AT-ST starts blending into the forest, as if it's been standing there for years. I'm building trees using wire for the base. It's quick, strong and easy to bend into shape, perfect to get the basic form right. After that, I cover the wire with Super Sculpting. Then I start sculpting the details, adding bark texture, cracks, branch holes, nut holes and little imperfections to make it look natural and old. Super Sculpting has to be baked in the oven to harden it, So after sculpting, I put the tree in to cure the clay and make it solid. Once it's baked and cooled down, I drill small holes into the trunk and glue in bits of seafoam to build the tree crown and finer branches. This gives the tree a natural silhouette and makes it blend perfectly with the forest sea. Seafoam is a natural dried plant material that model makers use to create very fine tree branches. It's one of the easiest ways to get a believable tree silhouette without sculpting every tiny branch by hand. I prime my trees with a white primer from Army Painter. I start painting the trees using different washes. The wash darkens the low areas and makes the sculpted details pop instantly. It's a really simple step. The wash basically does all the work for you. Once it dries, the tree already looks much more natural and alive. As the moss goes on, the tree starts to look less like something I sculpted, and more like something the forest shaped over time. And the best part is, this is a really simple trick, anyone can do it. And while that dries, I coat the twigs in the crown lightly with glue. Then I sprinkle different leaf substrates over the glued branches to imitate autumn leaves, mixing colors and sizes to keep it natural and believable. And just like that, our trees are finished, and they are looking really good. Next I move on to the foam board to build the base plate for the diorama. This material is sturdy, easy to cut and perfect for creating the overall layout. Next I glue more pieces of foam onto the base plate. With these I build up the forest ground and shape the riverbed. And here we witness Toby discovering he is, in fact, immortal. Now I take a long lighter and carefully melt the surface of the foam just a little. This helps me smooth the ground and soften the edges. I recommend doing this step outside, the fumes are not part of the diorama experience. Now I'm mixing plaster, a tiny drop of dish soap, water and black acrylic paint. The dish soap helps the mix flow smoother and reduces bubbles when I apply it. And once everything is mixed, I brush it onto the prepared terrain, covering the foam, filling gaps and smoothing the surface for the next layers. This gives the ground a solid organic skin. Simple base, ready for detail. To add texture under the water, I sprinkle some sand into the riverbed. For a brown forest ground, I mix red, yellow, blue and green together. Foam is easy to stack, carve and control, which makes it perfect for creating height, structure and the natural form of the landscape. Here I'm showing you how to turn simple foam board into natural looking rocks. To give the foam a stone look, I mix plaster, sand, acrylic paint and water. When it's blended, it creates a thicker texture that already looks like rough grounded rock. Then I brush it onto the foam, covering the surface and shaping it, so the terrain doesn't look like stacked foam anymore. I paint the ground brown, the stones grey and give the stones a dry brush with white. Load your brush with a small amount of paint, wipe most paint off until the brush looks almost dry and lightly brush across raised surfaces. Build up highlights slowly and don't press too hard. Last step before adding the dirt layer and ground scatter is painting the riverbed. I base coat it with blue acrylic paint, keeping it stronger in tone for now, because the resin layers on top will soften and blend the color later. To attach the dirt onto the base, I mix water with wood glue and a small drop of dish soap. It's a simple mixture, but it locks everything in place and prepares the diorama for the next detail layer. Now I start adding foliage onto the forest ground. I use the same leaf material that I applied to the trees to keep the look consistent. I place it loosely, some areas a bit heavier, some lighter, which gives the forest a more layered and organic feel. By adding different moss onto the rocks and forest ground, the diorama starts to look much more realistic. The color variety and natural texture help the terrain feel grounded and believable. This step gives the scene that natural, reclaimed by the forest look. Now I'm using my budget grass applicator to apply the static grass. The tool uses static electricity to charge the fibers, which helps them stand upright when they land on the glued surface. This makes the grass look like it's actually growing upwards, not just lying on the ground. Grass tufts are always a great way to make a diorama look more natural. They add small, irregular patches of growth that break up the flat areas and help the ground feel organic and alive. Next, I'm adding my own plants along the riverbank. I draw each leaf on paper, cut them out using my craft knife. One part always tries to escape. This leaf did not want to be in a diorama. I painted them in different tones of green to give them a natural look. After painting, I gently shape every leaf by hand, adding small bands and curves so they look random, alive and real, like forest plants growing close to water. Then I carefully glue them along the river's edge to frame the stream and bring more structure and life to the riverbank. A few real stones and small branches help complete the forest floor and bring the whole woodland scene together. I use masking tape to keep the epoxy from running out of the riverbed and ruining my table. I like my table, and I'd like to keep it. I mix the two-part epoxy using an equal weight ratio for both components. Then I add colors that are specially made for epoxy. The epoxy takes time to cure. Working slowly helps keep the surface clean and prevents unwanted bubbles or messy edges. Once it sets, it creates a smooth water look that gives the diorama motion, even in a scene that stands completely still. For the water flow in the rapids, I use UV resin. I apply it around the river to shape small waves, fast current lines, and rougher areas where the river speeds up. For the rapids, I build thin layers and cure them with UV light, step by step, so the texture stays natural and controlled. This helps me imitate splashing water and sharp flow changes without flooding the whole river again. The combination of epoxy for the volume and UV resin for the highlights gives the river its character. One small drop of white epoxy color helps imitate the natural spray and water flow. Just a tiny amount gives the river extra motion and creates the illusion of splash without turning the whole pool blue. It's a simple trick that adds a lot of life to the scene. After adding the last details, I drill a few holes into the base plate for our trees. These holes help lock the trees into place and keep them from looking like they're just sitting on top of the surface. Then I glued the wire-built, oven-hardened trees into the board so they feel rooted and truly part of the terrain. It's a simple step, but it gives the whole base real structure and a natural connection to the ground. Next, I add wildlife to the forest. I glue small deer and stags into the scene, placing them between trees and moss to give the forest more life and story. They match the scale of the AT-ST walker perfectly, which is important. The environment and the model should always speak the same visual language. They give the viewer a sense of size, and besides of that, I love animals. And now for the final step. I place the AT-ST into the foreground, right beside the river. It's finally where it belongs in the scene, surrounded by trees, roots, and the calm flow of the steam. In the end, it's always the details that bring a world to life. The ground, layered with leaves, moss, sticks, stones, and time. The river just runs through the forest, past deer, past moss, past everything that continued living after the machine stood still. And there, standing quietly between shadow and sunlight, the walker. Let's take one last look, and then I'll hand it back to the forest.
Alright, here it is, my finished diorama, and honestly, I'm pretty happy how it turned out. If you enjoyed watching me struggle, succeed, and somehow end up with something that actually looks cool, feel free to stick around. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with another fun project coming up, and another episode of Toby Tries Not to Ruin It. Share, like, subscribe, see you next time, bye.